And we're back with another AFL Fantasy team analysis video for 2025. Today we're talking about the North Melbourne Kangaroos, one of the most interesting AFL Fantasy teams for the upcoming year. To start us off here in the Beast section, I've got one of the best players from last year, and that is Tristan Cherry, a ruckman for North Melbourne who finally took advantage of a number one ruck role for the first time in his career. Absolutely stunning season, increasing his average by 48, an obscene increase from his previous seasons. And he had an obnoxious end to 2024, averaging 138.1 from the last 6 games. Everyone's wondering, he had so many tackles last year, is it sustainable? I'm here to tell you, yes. Yes, Cherry is a beast, he is a pig, he is still young, he's got the number one ruck role locked down, and he moves around like a midfielder who just wants the ball, and he's hungry, kind of like Brodie Grundy was a few years ago, just able to run and chase people down as a big man and still get 30 hitouts a game is some obscene talent in the AFL. He's just the complete package, and yeah, again, only 26 years old as the season begins, so lock him in. He is my number one ruck coming into this year. That's right, number one, and if you pass him in the first 3 picks, then you are an absolute fool, in my opinion. Get him on draft day if you can. Next up, another huge accumulator from last year in the form of Harry Sheezel, a defender for 2025. He's an absolute stud of a player. He's only coming into his 3rd year in the league. Sheezel has averaged 97 and 112 in his first 2 seasons in the league, which is just breaking the mold of new players in a new generation of football, to be honest. Just absolute freak. Whether he's in defense or in the forward line, Sheezel just manages to make impacts wherever he is and make up the numbers. The question will be, can he sustain his dominance with all these other high draft picks coming through the ranks and with the new recruits being picked up in the off-season? Caleb Daniel is primed for a halfback role, and Kobe McKercher as well is a big pig in the making. And he was deployed down back as well a lot last year. He's also we'll talk about him in a second. Also, Tom Powell is another one that was put down there a lot, and he has some great footy smarts. All I'm saying is there's a lot of the ball to get shared around, and there's a lot of talent to pick it up if it's not Sheezel. I just don't think he can keep the ball out of his hands. He's going to be amazing again in 2025. Where he goes in draft, I think if he's there in round 1, especially the second half of round 1, I think you have to pick him up, right? At least on the turn, if you're on the turn for the end of round 1, pick up Harry Sheezel, lock, throw away the key, one of the best defenders in the league. All right, this guy's been hyped up a lot since being drafted, and he's never quite hit the huge heights, but I reckon LDU is in for a PB season this year, definitely. He's a premium on-baller and clearance specialist for North Melbourne, and he rarely has a bad game. He's always been pipped for the next big thing, but never quite hits that triple-digit average. Surely one of the days he will hit that triple-digit average with all the centre bounces he gets. He is the man in the middle. He did play a full season for the first time last year and is having a good pre-season this year so far in 2025. Just hoping he can pick up his tackling a bit with so many CBAs. I think he needs to tackle a bit more and just edge closer to that triple digits. I think I'm giving him a conservative average year of 97. He could be much better than that this year if he finally hits his mark. On to some breakouts and sleepers now. And first up here, I've got Kobe McKercher, who was tipped as Zach Merritt 2.0 in his draft year. Kobe McKercher is just one to keep at the top of your draft boards for the next 10 to 15 years. He's a high accumulator of the footy with an elite running capacity that gets him open for easy defensive marks and run and carry off halfback flanks. His debut season was last year, and it was one of the best in recent times. He was injured early in a game last year and ended up with a score of 2. So if you take that out, McKercher was actually averaging 87.6 from his first season. Genuinely, I think he will explode this year and show everyone just how freakish he is. And I reckon he will get very, very close to the 100 average mark this year. And I could be conservative in saying that he gets to 99, to be honest. He is a freak talent, and with defender status, absolute valuable pick in drafts, and would not regret picking him up in the first, maybe 5 rounds in draft. Genuine gun. Another guy that's been waiting and waiting for a few years now is Tom Powell, who's a midfielder coming into this year. Another potential superstar. He's just been brewing away. He's just an incredibly intelligent footballer. He bumped up his average by 19 last year to get a new personal best, but I reckon he is going to go even bigger this year. His awareness and ability to read the play is right up there with the best in the AFL, though it hasn't always translated to fantasy points so far. Those around him know that it is a good idea for Powell to have the ball in his hands. When given the CBAs, he produced solid numbers, but that was taken away from him after round 6 last year, and he had a bit of a bad run of form, only to be given a defensive role after round 15 last year. He definitely received a boost in scoring, and he actually turned up 3 times in a row between round 20 and 22. If he can bring some more consistency to his game in 2025, I think he'll average well into the 80s and could be a very, very handy midfielder to have as an M4 or M5 in deeper leagues. Coming over from the Western Bulldogs after getting seriously bevoed last year is Caleb Daniel. I think he's come over to greener pastures this year, coming to North Melbourne, where he's said to be primarily training as a defensive half flank and probably taking a lot of kick-ins this year. He used to play there in his heyday at the Doggies, and he scored incredibly well and was incredibly consistent in that position as well. His work rate is absolutely elite, and even with his small size, he is able to outrun and take down the bigger bodies around him. He had a hamstring issue in the preseason, so just keep an eye on him on the lead up to round 1. But when he does get games, I think we're all going to get reminded of just how good Caleb Daniel can be. And as a forward, I think he is a top 5 forward, definitely this year. Lock him in. And my final sleeper breakout option is another recruit in the off-season in the form of Luke Parker. A legend at the Sydney Swans for his entire career, Parker made the move to North Melbourne to be a leader that North desperately need on field for 2025. I expect him to play a role forward of the ball, but he will probably get some midfield minutes as well. Until last year's strange year of mishaps where he was injured and got suspended, Parker regularly averaged 90 plus fantasy points per season for like the previous 10 years before that. He's incredibly smart and is lethal around goal as well, taking marks and kicking it from anywhere. He's a serious forward to consider this year, and I'm not sure where he will go in a lot of drafts, but I do think he's going to average right up in the mid-80s this year, and I don't think he'll be able to get kept out of it. On to the main rookie from last year's draft, the number 2 selection in Finn O'Sullivan. The second pick last year, O'Sullivan is a ready-made player with good movement for his size and good overhead marking capabilities. He is not known to accumulate the ball a whole lot, but he is very impactful with the ball and is very capable of hitting the scoreboard. To be honest, I'm not overly keen on him from a fantasy point of view, but he will get games and he could prove me wrong. He could be something else entirely. Just wait and see where he's deployed to start the season. As well as that, there are some other rookies' names to remember coming into the season in the form of Braden George, who's a forward, Geordie Payne, last year's mid-season draftee, and Luke Urquhart, a late round selection in this year's draft, who is a very accumulative midfielder, or possibly fantasy relevant players if they do get a game this year. Finally, I do have one guy to beware this year, and it might be a bit controversial, but Jai Simpkin is a man who has just been up and down his career. He's a mid forward, and so he does get into the midfield, but he is a very inconsistent scorer, mainly due to injuries, but he also gets role changes as well, hence the forward status. He does gather a fair share of disposals, and he was used a lot more CBAs in the second half of last season. I just feel he is going to be one of the biggest victims of the sudden rise in the talented youth at North Melbourne. You know, this has been a pretty big video, and that's because there's so much happening at North this year. You know, LDU, Wardlaw, Sheasel, Tom Powell, Luke Parker, even Will Phillips might still be relevant. Kobe McKercher, all these guys are running through the midfield, and it puts Simpkin down the pecking order more and more over time. So call me cautious, but I'm just okay letting Simpkin slide a little bit in drafts, and yeah, just waiting that little bit to get him. Just wait. Anyway, that is a big North Melbourne video and a few names to keep on your radar come draft day. Hope I've given you some insight with this video, and if you've liked it at all, please consider liking and subscribing. And yeah, I'll see you in the next one. We're going to get into some Port Adelaide players next, I think, and some serious fantasy studs going on there. So stay tuned for that one. See you then.